For more than a century, railroads were the iron spine of the United States. They carried presidents and immigrants, coal and cattle, mail and memory. They stitched together a continent, built cities from nothing, and defined the rhythm of American life. From the 1830s through the mid-20th century, the railroad was not just transportation, it was the nation's bloodstream. But by the late 1960s, that dominance was collapsing. The interstate highway system, a vast, federally funded concrete grid, carved through neighborhoods, bulldozed communities, and siphoned passengers away from trains. To some, it was sold as progress, but in truth, it was a wretched mistake of industrial history. A decision that gutted walkable cities, empowered sprawl, and accelerated the decline of America's passenger railroads. Airlines soared, highways sprawled, and the great passenger trains of the 19th and early 20th centuries, the very trains that built America, were dying. On the night of April 30th, 1971, the nation stood at a precipice. Either let passenger rail vanish or create something entirely new. From that crisis, Amtrak was born. 1970. After more than a century of dominance, America's passenger railroads are collapsing. The great private carriers that once built cities and connected oceans are bankrupt, bleeding passengers to jetliners and to the wretched interstate highway system that carved through neighborhoods and drained the life out of downtowns. Penn Central falls first, the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history at the time, and the rest of the industry begs Congress for a way out. Passenger trains are dying, and the nation is about to lose them forever. In response, the government creates a new national carrier, a last-chance experiment to keep intercity rail alive. Its name is Amtrak. May 1st, 1971, Day 1. At 12:01 a.m., the first Amtrak trains roll into the darkness. There is no polished fleet, no unified identity, no guarantee the railroad will survive even a single year. But there is one symbol of rebirth, the Day 1 unit, E8 number 4316, painted in stark black with a bold red-white-blue chevron. It is raw, simple, and defiant. A locomotive that looks like it's daring the country to give up on passenger rail. Everything else is chaos. This is the Rainbow Era. Amtrak's early trains look like a rolling museum of America's fallen railroads. Santa Fe's red and silver war bonnet couples to Great Northern's orange and green. Union Pacific yellow rides behind Burlington stainless steel. Southern Pacific gray mixes with Penn Central black. No two cars match. No two trains look alike. It is beautiful, chaotic, and barely functional, but it moves, and that alone keeps the national network alive. The locomotives are whatever can run, aging E8s and E9s, tired F7s and FP7s, freight-borne U-boats, and the mighty GG1s still thundering down the Northeast Corridor. Amtrak is a patchwork railroad stitched together from the ruins of a century-old system. Then comes the first big gamble, the SDP-40F. Amtrak's first brand-new long-distance diesel arrives in 1973, powerful and modern, meant to drag the railroad into the future. Instead, derailments plague the fleet. Trains go on the ground, routes are disrupted, confidence collapses. The crisis nearly kills Amtrak before it turns 5. But even in the middle of the chaos, something new begins to grow. States start partnering with Amtrak to restore corridor service. California funds early intrastate trains that will one day evolve into the San Joaquins and the Surfliner. Illinois supports Chicago-based corridors. Michigan invests in faster Chicago-Detroit service. The Pacific Northwest lays the groundwork for what will eventually become the Cascades. These early partnerships are small, fragile, and experimental, but they are the seeds of the modern corridor network. By the mid-70s, Amtrak begins to shed the mismatched Rainbow-era equipment and forge a real identity. The Phase 1 paint scheme appears, bold red, white, and blue stripes that finally give the railroad a national face. The first Amfleet cars arrive, stainless steel tubes inspired by jetliners, instantly modernizing the Northeast Corridor. And a new locomotive begins to appear, the F40PH, a compact, powerful machine that will become the face of Amtrak for the next 2 decades. But the decade ends with pain. In 1979, Congress demands cuts. Amtrak slashes nearly a fifth of its national network. Entire routes vanish overnight. The system shrinks, but it survives. And that is the story of the 1970s. The 1980s arrive with Amtrak still fighting for its identity, still proving to Congress, to the states, and to the traveling public that a national passenger rail system is not a relic of the past, but a living, breathing necessity. The decade opens with a fleet that is aging, a budget that is fragile, and a political climate that shifts like desert wind. But even in the middle of uncertainty, something remarkable happens. The trains keep running. Across the country, a new sound becomes the heartbeat of American passenger rail, the steady, confident thrum of the EMD F40PH. Compact, powerful, and unmistakable, the F40PH becomes the face of Amtrak in the 1980s. Its Leslie horn echoes across plains, mountains, and coastlines. It leads the empire builder through the northern wilderness, the California Zephyr over the Rockies, the Southwest Chief across the high desert, and the Coast Starlight along the Pacific cliffs. The F40PH is not just a locomotive, it is a symbol of endurance. On the Northeast Corridor, electrification defines the decade. The AEM-7, a Swedish-designed electric locomotive, arrives like a bolt of lightning, fast, efficient, and reliable. Nicknamed the Toaster, it becomes the backbone of the NEC, hauling Northeast regionals, metroliners, and commuter trains with a confidence that reshapes expectations. Alongside it, the older E60 electrics soldier on through the early part of the decade, heavy and imposing, bridging the gap between Amtrak's early years and its modern ambitions. The regional and state-supported services begin to take shape in this era as well. In Southern California, the San Diegan corridor grows steadily along the coast, connecting Los Angeles and San Diego with increasing frequency. In Northern California, the Sacramento Bay Area corridor, the service that will later become the Capital Corridor, begins to strengthen its role as a vital intercity link. Through the Central Valley, the San Joaquins expand their schedules and ridership, becoming one of the most important state-supported routes in the West. In the Midwest, the Hiawatha service between Chicago and Milwaukee continues to evolve, even before the name becomes official near the end of the decade. The Illinois state-supported trains, the Illini, the Illinois Zephyr, and the Chicago-Quincy corridor maintain essential connections across the region. In New York, the Empire service continues to link the Hudson Valley to Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo, forming one of the most reliable state partnerships in the system. These services, supported by states and local partnerships, become the seeds of a future where regional rail will play a central role in America's transportation network. The long-distance trains remain the soul of the system. The Empire Builder, the Zephyr, the Chief, the Starlight, the Crescent, the City of New Orleans, the Silver Service, the Lakeshore Limited, each one a moving piece of American geography. They carry families, workers, students, soldiers, dreamers. They connect cities and towns that airlines overlook and highways bypass. They are not luxuries, they are lifelines. The 1980s also bring the expansion of the Surfliner fleet, the double-decked cars that redefine long-distance travel in the West. With their panoramic windows, spacious lounges, and bi-level sleepers, the Surfliners turn the Western trains into rolling national parks. Passengers watch the continent unfold from the upper level, mountains rising like monuments, deserts stretching to the horizon, rivers carving their way through ancient stone. Even as budgets tighten and political battles rage, Amtrak continues to modernize. The Amfleet cars, introduced in the 1970s, settle into their role as the backbone of the system. Their stainless steel bodies and airline-inspired interiors become a familiar sight from Boston to Miami, from Chicago to New Orleans. The decade is not easy. Funding is uncertain. Equipment is aging. The system is stretched thin, but the trains endure, the crews endure, the passengers endure. And through it all, the F40PH leads the way. A locomotive that becomes, for an entire generation, the face of American passenger rail. By the end of the 1980s, Amtrak stands at a crossroads. It has survived its first decade. It has weathered political storms. It has built partnerships with states. It has modernized its fleet. And it has proven, mile by mile, that passenger rail still has a place in the American landscape. The stage is set for the 1990s. A decade that will bring new technology, new challenges, and a new vision for what American rail can become. The 1990s open with Amtrak in a moment of transition. The F40PH, the workhorse of the 1980s, is still out front, but the fleet is aging, and the railroad needs something new. Before the next generation arrives, a temporary guardian steps in, the -8 32BWH, a freight-derived locomotive pressed into passenger service. For a brief but memorable period, these wide-nosed -8s take the reins, leading trains across the country while Amtrak waits for its future to arrive. That future comes in the form of the GE Genesis series. First the P40, then the P42. Sleek, angular, and far more fuel-efficient, the Genesis locomotives redefine the look of American passenger rail. They take over the long-distance network and quickly become the dominant face of Amtrak through the late 1990s and into the 2000s. On the Northeast Corridor, the AEM-7 continues to rule the electrified territory. But the decade brings something entirely new, America's first high-speed train. Years of engineering, planning, and political negotiation culminate in the creation of the Acela Express, a tilting, high-speed train set designed to bring world-class rail travel to the United States. As the millennium approaches, the Acela prepares to launch, signaling a new era for the NEC. In California, the 1990s mark the final chapter of one of the state's most historic trains, the San Joaquin, a name that dates back to the Santa Fe Railway and carried into the Amtrak era, continues to run along the Southern California coast. But by the end of the decade, the corridor is ready for a new identity. In 2000, the San Joaquin name is retired, replaced by the Pacific Surfliner, accompanied by the introduction of the blue and silver Surfliner bi-level cars. After decades of service, the San Joaquin fades into history, remembered as one of the longest-running names in California passenger rail. Elsewhere in the state, another historic name continues unchanged, the San Joaquin, a title that traces its lineage back to the Southern Pacific era, remains the identity of the Central Valley's passenger trains. Through the 1990s and into the 2000s, the San Joaquins grow steadily, strengthened by new schedules, new stations, and the introduction of California cars. The name endures because it carries the weight of regional history, connecting Amtrak's modern service to the legacy of the Valley's original passenger trains. Across California, new equipment reshapes the regional network. The California cars, purpose-built bi-level coaches, become the backbone of the Capital Corridor and San Joaquins. Their spacious interiors and distinctive design give California's state-supported trains a unique identity. Meanwhile, the F59 PHI locomotives, sleek, streamlined, and painted in bold state colors, take over much of the regional service, becoming icons of West Coast railroading. Farther north, the Pacific Northwest introduces one of the most distinctive passenger experiences in the country. The Amtrak Cascade service debuts with Talgo train sets, low-slung and articulated, designed for comfort and speed on curving track. Paired with F59 PHI locomotives, the Cascades trains stand out immediately, offering a modern, elegant alternative to traditional equipment and giving the region a strong, unified identity. By the early 2000s, the transformation is complete. The Genesis locomotives dominate the national network. The Acela becomes the flagship of the Northeast Corridor. California's corridors take on their modern form with Surfliners, California cars, and F59 PHIs. The Cascades establish themselves with Talgo equipment. The San Joaquin name continues its long journey from the Southern Pacific era into the 21st century. And the last echoes of the San Joaquin fade as the Pacific Surfliner era begins. These services remain unchanged through the duration of the early 2000s, however. In the 2010s, another transformation once again started to take place. The 2010s open with Amtrak standing at the threshold of a new era. After decades of holding the system together with aging fleets and incremental upgrades, the first true wave of 21st century transformation begins to take shape. The decade becomes a turning point, a moment when the railroad starts replacing the machines that defined its past with the technology that will carry it into the future. On the Northeast Corridor, the change is unmistakable. For more than 30 years, the AEM-7, the toaster, has been the backbone of electrified service. It hauled regionals, clocked millions of miles, and became one of the most reliable locomotives in American history. But by the early 2010s, its time is ending. In its place arrives a new generation of power, the Siemens ACS-64, known as the city's sprinter. With their sharp lines, regenerative braking, and modern electronics, the ACS-64s represent a leap forward. One by one, they take over the Northeast Corridor, pushing the AEM-7s into retirement and giving the region a new standard of speed, reliability, and efficiency. The NEC begins to feel different, quieter, smoother, more modern, as the new electrics settle into their role. Across the rest of the country, another transformation begins. Amtrak introduces the Siemens Charger, a sleek, low-emission diesel locomotive designed for state-supported corridors. The Chargers arrive first in the Midwest and Pacific Northwest, then spread to California and beyond. Their distinctive hum and crisp acceleration mark a clear break from the older fleets. For the first time in decades, states receive brand new diesel power built specifically for passenger service. The Cascades Corridor adopts the Chargers alongside its Talgo train sets, blending new locomotives with the region's signature articulated equipment. California's corridors, the Surfliner, the Capital Corridor, and the San Joaquins, begin transitioning as well, pairing Chargers with Surfliner cars, California cars, and the bi-level fleets that define the state's identity. Everywhere they appear, the Chargers signal the same message. The era of hand-me-down locomotives is ending. A new generation is taking the lead. The 2020s open with Amtrak entering the most dramatic transformation in its modern history. After decades of stretching aging fleets far beyond their intended lifespans, the railroad begins a sweeping renewal, a generational reinvention of nearly everything that moves passengers across the country. The long-distance network is the first to feel the shift. The ALC-42, a purpose-built long-distance diesel locomotive, begins replacing the aging P-42 Genesis fleet. With higher horsepower, lower emissions, and a striking new look, the ALC-42 becomes the new face of cross-country travel. One by one, these locomotives take over the Western trains, marking the first true modernization of long-distance motive power in a generation. On the Northeast Corridor, the transformation is unmistakable. After 2 decades of service, the original Acela train sets are replaced by the next generation, the Avelia Liberty. Faster, lighter, and equipped with advanced tilting technology, the new Acela ushers in a renewed commitment to high-speed rail in America. Across the state-supported corridors, a new wave of equipment reshapes the passenger experience. Siemens Venture coaches, modern, accessible, and designed for quick boarding, enter service across the Midwest, the Pacific Northwest, and California. Their wide doors, bright interiors, and contemporary design mark a clear break from the fleets of the past. Then comes the Aero. These next-generation train sets, built by Siemens, combine modern coaches with dual-power locomotives capable of switching between diesel and electric operation. Designed to replace the Amfleet 1 cars, the Aero fleet will redefine corridor travel with panoramic windows, faster acceleration, and a unified modern aesthetic. They will serve the Northeast, the Northwest, and major state corridors, becoming the backbone of Amtrak's 21st century identity. But the 2020s are not just about equipment, they are about expansion. New services begin to appear across the map. The Borealis launches in the upper Midwest, restoring intercity rail to a corridor that had waited decades for its return. In the South, the Mardi Gras service debuts, reconnecting communities with a modern, reliable passenger link. And in Florida, a historic revival takes shape. The Floridian returns to the timetable, restoring a legendary long-distance route with modern equipment and a renewed mission to reconnect the Southeast. In California, the decade brings a symbolic shift. The San Joaquin, a name that traced its lineage back to the Southern Pacific era, is officially retired and replaced by the Gold Runner. The new name reflects the Central Valley's heritage and its role in the state's modern rail network. The Gold Runner becomes the new identity of the corridor, carrying the region's history into a new era. Yet the largest transformation of all is still ahead. For the first time since the 1970s, Amtrak commits to replacing its long-distance passenger cars, the superliners and single-level sleepers that have carried generations of travelers. The plan calls for roughly 800 new single-level long-distance cars, enough to renew the entire national network. These new sleepers, diners, lounges, and coaches will define overnight travel for the next 50 years. By the mid-2020s, the outlines of a new Amtrak are unmistakable. The ALC-42 leads the long-distance trains. The Avelia Liberty becomes the new Acela. Venture cars reshape state corridors. Aero train sets prepare to take over the Northeast and beyond. New services, Borealis, Mardi Gras, and the revived Floridian, expand the map, and the Gold Runner carries the legacy of the Central Valley into a new era. The 2020s become the decade when Amtrak stops patching the past and begins building the future. A future defined by new trains, new routes, and a renewed belief in the promise of passenger rail in America. That is all the time we have for this episode of Railroads of America. But in a future episode, I will cover more of the technological advancements to come, including hydrogen. May your lights be green on the high iron, and be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for when new videos are uploaded.